So it is here. Forza 7, in particular the pre-order bonus version, which still doesn't have full access to everything on the game, such as the marketplace, unfortunately, but it's here, and I've had the opportunity to get hands-on experience with it, of course, and some of the footage that you'll see here, or in fact, all of the footage, is footage from my first roughly 40 minutes to an hour of playing the game. Now, some of the stuff which you could touch on in a video like this, we've kind of already touched on in my review of the demo, because the start of this game opens up in a very similar way to the Forza 7 demo. Now, the three opening events are actually exactly the same. You've got the Porsche 911 at Abu Dhabi, you've got the Mercedes truck at Mugello, and then there is a slight change with the Nissan GTR JGTC machine, or JPGT, or Super GT, or whatever you want to call it, because instead of being at the Nürburgring GP course, yes, I know people don't agree with my pronunciation, couldn't care less, instead of that circuit, it's now at Suzuka instead, which is an interesting change, and because of playing the demo, I found the physics of the handling in particular a lot easier to get used to. The truck I already found great, but again, I'm not going to go super into those three, because if you want to know more about them, you could check out my review of the demo. And so, what is the game like? Once you get past that initial tutorial phase, if you will, when you actually get into the game properly, be able to look through menus, check out Auto Vista or Forza Vista, look at the new cars, the tuning, that kind of thing. Well, the menu with any new game takes some time to get used to, but in the case of Forza 7, at least for me personally, it is simultaneously a nice update over, say, Forza 5 or Forza 6, but at the same time, it feels familiar once you get into it. It's interesting to look at, it's well laid out, and it's actually very similar to Forza 6, but with more personality and more character put in there as well. The game has a slightly greasier look to it, with the menu layout, with the garage that you're in, that kind of stuff, which I kind of like. I've been playing a lot of Fallout 4 recently, and it has a similar kind of vibe to it, with a kind of not quite clean layout, which is a nice change, because racing games always look super clean and super crisp. I like it to look a bit dirty and a bit messy sometimes, because for any who, like myself, have actually been a mechanic or worked in a garage, it isn't a clean place. Not if you're doing your job properly, unless of course you work for Bugatti or someone like that, where they polish their tools every time they use it. But the menus aside, what is the rest of the game like? At least, of course, so far in my very limited time playing it as yet. But as far as the car lineup goes, which is pretty much always the first thing that I personally look through when I play a new racing game, and I'm sure that's the same for you guys as well for the most part, there are cars which are new, but a lot of the cars are returning vehicles from older Forza games, or even from recent Forza games like 5 and 6, as you'd assume they would be, and some of them are interesting to see back, not necessarily in comparison to Forza 6, but in comparison to the most recent Forza game, which is actually, of course, Horizon 3. Because on Horizon 3, there are no Volkswagens, for instance. On here, we do have them. Now, on Forza 6, we did have those anyway, but it's still nice to see them come back again. And there's this whole thing with Toyota not appearing in games as much anymore. I'm not really sure what's going on there, I haven't looked into it that much. But there aren't many Toyotas on here. There are, however, some. There's a Toyota Group C machine, and I believe, if memory serves, there was also a Toyota jump truck, or a trophy truck, which I noticed in the car selection as well. But apart from that, not much else. And of course, on Gran Turismo Sport as well, Toyota is kind of pulled out of that game also for the most part, which is kind of strange. But in the grand scheme of things, Toyota definitely has its fans, but we're not going to die without them. And I don't think the outcry over them is going to be the same as for somebody like Porsche. A lot of people go out of their minds for Porsche, and if you do like them, you're going to like this game, because they're back strong, there's some very good models to choose from. For me personally, there are two which I care about more than all the others, the Carrera GT and the 962. The rest, I wouldn't really mind if they weren't in the game at all. It's nice to have them, but they're not essential. As far as returning faces, there are a lot of cars which I'm glad that they kept over, stuff like the Lamborghini LM002, the 1930s Ford Deluxe, and also the Woody wagon from Horizon 3 again. I love cars like that. I'm a huge fan of the vintage Grand Prix machines as well, like the old Maseratis and the Alphas. I know many racing gamers don't care that much about vintage cars. Personally, I'm a huge fan of them though. and I wish more games, especially games which you'd typically expect to have cars like that, like Gran Turismo for instance, I wish they had more of those. But they don't, really. There are some, but not many. And I like that Forza is bolstering their car lineup with vehicles like that, much older machines, and not just Grand Prix cars, but like I said, the Woodies and the deluxe coupes, and hopefully they continue that trend with other cars from both the pre- and post-war era. As far as stuff like exotics goes, supercars, hypercars, megacars, well, you've got all of the big names. You've got a good selection of Paganis, you've got the Zenvo, Saleen S7, Veyron Supersport, a couple of Koenigsegg's, including probably most notably the Regera, which is a pretty badass machine. And from other companies as well, you've got the obvious stuff. Your McLaren P1s, your LaFerraris, your Porsche 918, as I already said, the Carrera GT. There are some which aren't featured, or not that I noticed. I didn't notice a Mercedes SLR McLaren. That might have been there and I just didn't see it, but I don't think there was. That car is supposed to be returning to Horizon 3 in a leaked list of DLC cars. I know, again, probably most people won't care that much about it. I'm a massive SLR fan, so I do hope that they bring that back. As far as Forza 7 goes, they might not. Most people probably won't care. But again, we have some other vehicles returning which haven't been featured. Not in Mercedes, but in Porsche, once again specifically. The 911 GT1, the road car in particular, has returned. I don't recall that being on Forza 6, if memory serves. It did used to be on Forza, of course. And it was a very cool car, extremely fast, and as you'd expect it to be, alongside the CLK GTR and the R390 road car, one of the quickest street cars you can get. It's basically just a race car with a number plate, or a license plate. To say it's a street car is a very loose term. It's a race car for the road in the utmost sense, even more than something like an Aerial Atom is, really. But the car selection is good. It, of course, has the most cars of any Forza game so far, and you're not going to be disappointed, I don't think. There are always cars which you could say, oh, I wish this was featured, I wish that was featured. Of course, you could say that about any game. And until somebody makes a game that has every car ever made, well, people are going to continue saying that. And that's probably never going to happen anyway. But one of the things that I really like about Forza 7 so far, and you get this more, of course, from the full game than just the demo, is something which I was thinking to myself earlier on today about an entirely different game called Enthusia. I think some of you guys will, well, I know some of you guys will remember that game on the PS2. I would say Enthusia is the best Gran Turismo and Forza alternative that there has ever been, because they realised when they were making that game that it's not just about the amount of cars and how good the graphics are and how good the physics are, it's more than that. You can have all the cars in the world, but if the game has no character and no personality and no pizzazz, then there'll be no reason to come back, no reason to remember the game. Enthusia had that. And so far, I would say that that is something which Forza 7 is trying and so far succeeding to bring back, compared to, I would say, both Forza 5 and 6. I haven't played 5 all that much, because I played 6 first, in a similar way, funnily enough, to my Gran Turismo experience, where I played GT6 and then GT5. Forza 5 and 6, though, for me, don't have as much personality, and they don't have as much character as Forza 2 and 4 did, in particular. Not that they're bad, but that I played through the majority of the career mode on Forza 6, for instance, and just didn't feel like it had all that much character. It felt what I would call very clinical. You get a car, you drive a car, you win, you buy more, rinse and repeat. And in essence, that is what all racing games are about. But as I said with Enthusia, you want more than that. You want the game to have that character, something to keep you coming back more than just slogging through races. And that looks like they've really tried, and as I said, succeeded so far in trying to bring that character which we love about Forza back in Forza 7, or at least, for those who maybe don't think it ever went, increasing that character at the very least. And the car selection is one of the things that goes to show that. As far as stuff like graphics and physics, I already touched on the physics in the demo. It felt a little bit different to me in the full game, but I think that might be because of playing the demo first, and now I'm kind of used to the driving style. That might be the case. I definitely found it easier in this game to drive the Super GT Nissan in the rain than I did on the demo. So that's probably just down to experience, I guess, of playing the demo first. As far as graphics, As I mentioned in my review of the demo, games are getting so good now that you really need to do side-by-side comparisons usually to fully appreciate the differences, but there are still certain ways that you can instantly love certain aspects of graphics on a game, be it Forza, GT, whatever. And in this case, driving my first choice of car in the game, the all-4 racing Mini Countryman, incidentally, it's probably not most people's choice of their first free car, but I chose it because of how much I like this car on Horizon 3. It's a really well-balanced, good handling machine, especially for its size and weight, and I'm glad I chose it. Now, as far as the graphics go, it was actually a good car to notice them, because it has a combination paint scheme. There's some matte areas and some gloss, and you can notice the texture improvements with a paint job like that. Now, some other people may not view that as all that important. I can understand that, it's a smaller detail, but it is something which immediately stuck out to me. I noticed the matte texture on the back of the car in particular, which looked really good. It had an authentic look to it. Also, as far as the interior of the car goes as well, and this is something which Forza 5 and 6 had also, but again they've refined the details more, made it a bit more fluid, is the interior ambience of the cars. The way you can see the dirt on the windshield, the bugs, the sunlight bouncing off the dashboard, the textures, again, of the interior. Because often a racing game will not put as much effort into the interiors as they do to the outside of the cars, and that's a shame, because there are certain cars which deserve to have fantastic levels of detail in their interiors. Stuff like Koenigsegg's, Pagani's, Spiker's, although Spiker isn't on the game at the moment, but companies like that, which have these exquisite interiors, they deserve that. And on this game, that is there. And even with something like this Countryman, which I drove, which doesn't exactly have the most amazing interior layout ever, you could still appreciate the kind of texture improvements, the overall feel of the interior. I already touched on the sounds of the vehicles from the interior in the demo. The truck in particular, you could hear those banging noises, the tinging sounds when you go around a corner. You can hear the body of the truck and the chassis stressing. I love that kind of stuff. To me, that is kind of more impressive than just the sound of the car in general, because it's those smaller details which add more to the immersion than just a loud dump valve or a squealing tyre sound effect. It's more about those smaller details at this point, because so many games are vying to have good sounds and good graphics and good car lineups. So it's when a company or a game really puts thought into something which others maybe don't as much, that's when it stands out more. And so far that has been the case for me with Forza 7. As you can probably tell, I enjoy it so far. I must admit, since playing Horizon 2 and 3 in particular, and how different the playthroughs of those games are, they have a much more happy-go-lucky style, they're more fun-centric rather than realism-centric. Because I've been playing those so much, I do find it harder to get back into the more mathematical approach of a Forza Motorsport title, of slogging through career mode races, and that's something which can never really change, because that's the essence of the racing game. And even the Horizon games, you still do that, it's just laid out in a different way. But that is something which I'm looking forward to getting into more on Forza 7 than I was on Forza 6, and definitely for Forza 5. Because again, going back to the character, it has that to keep you interested. And again, smaller details like the driving costumes that you can choose. They're interesting. I was looking through them, and you've got stuff like tuxedos. You can dress up as a clown while you're driving. I love that kind of thing. Totally unnecessary, and that's why it's so good. Kind of like, again, referencing another game, Midnight Club. In particular, Midnight Club 3 back on the PS2. There were pointless things that you could do on that game, like changing what the license plate on the car says. Who cares? It has no relevance, but it's so cool that you could do that. And also, of course, on Horizon you can do the same. Those smaller details really show the level of quality, yes, but also creativity behind a game. And we know that Turn 10 is a creative company, and we love them for it. So it's nice to see that showcased in Forza 7. But overall, I could talk about it at length. I already have talked about it at length. And if I continue, I'll basically start repeating myself, given that I've only been around an hour in the game so far. But for the moment, it's looking great. If you are a fan of Forza 6 in particular, I would definitely recommend this one because it does everything that that game does well, but then adds to it. And if you're a fan of the Horizon games, which I know some people are more of a fan of those than the motorsport games, which I can understand, if you are, then I would say give this one a chance. I wouldn't necessarily recommend to those people getting like a full-on collector's edition, which I did, because you need to know what you're getting into. You need to know that that's going to be worth it for you. So if you prefer the Horizon games, and maybe played those more than the motorsport titles, then pick it up, but don't necessarily expect to love this one as much as Horizon 3, for instance. And for me personally, I started playing Forza with Forza 2, so the motorsport part of the game was more dominant for me, and then the Horizon ones came later. So if that's more your kind of story, then I think you will enjoy this one, whereas if you're more into the free roaming kind of thing, you might find a game like this, and not just Forza 7, but any traditional motorsport game, be it 5, 6, Assetto Corsa, Project Cars, Gran Turismo, you might find those games a little bit too contained and a bit too limited for you, if you're used to and prefer the open world feel. And I can understand that, but that's something to bear in mind if you are a potential buyer. But overall, that's it for my initial thoughts. I will of course be putting out more videos over the coming months for Forza 7, and also for Gran Turismo Sport when that's released as well, for those who that appeals to. And we'll be putting out a variety of videos, car reviews, tunes, maybe some Let's Plays, even online stuff perhaps. So, of course, if that appeals to you, you can stick around on the channel to see that before anyone else. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.